Welcome back to Southern Character, where we share stories of grit and grace. I'm your host, James Lewis, and it's October, everybody. It is spooky season. It is officially upon us, and I am going to kick it off right today in Nashville, Tennessee, with the host of Southern Gothic, Mr. Brandon Schexnayder. Did I say that right?
That's right. You're from New Orleans. You've seen it before. Most people can't do it, so I knew you'd get it.
But look, it's October. You were just saying, it's a crazy time of your craziest month of the year. So absolutely want to say thank you for fitting me in to your spooky schedule.
Totally.
But yeah, there's so much I want to talk about today, so many things I want to cover, so many places we can go. Mm-hmm. But I really want to start with Southern Gothic, just in your words, your podcast. Yeah. What is it? What's it all about? Can you share that with our people?
Well, the elevator pitch is Southern Gothic. It's a podcast that explores the dark history and mysteries and ghost stories of the American South, okay? It's a history show. It's like going on a ghost tour. It's sound designed, it's scripted, so it's all narrated, edited. But what I like to tell people, my joy of it is I want to know, what's the story your mama told you growing up that you didn't believe? And then we're going to go get a researcher to look it up. And we're going to find out really what's going on and find that there. So that's what the show is. If you're from somewhere in the South, we might even have a story from your small town or something like that.
Right.
I really pride ourselves on telling stories that aren't your typical what you would see on the TV. I really like going places that haven't had a chance to really be covered and be heard elsewhere. So that's Southern Gothic, yeah.
So when you do I'm just curious, when you do the historical research, I know your sister Brianne
that's her name,
involved in the company. Does she do most of the historical research? Do you?
Yeah. Well, she started off developing the whole thing with me. So she's not as involved anymore. She's an archivist at the Louisiana State Museum. She's my younger sister. So she started before her career took off. And as her career in the museum system has taken off, she's kind of gone and focused more on her career rather than telling silly ghost stories, right? But she works down in the French Quarter, where the Jazz Museum is, right on the edge of the French Quarter. She works in the archives there, and she helps researchers, does all that. So she's very much, involved, for lack of a better term, in spirit still, because she really set the tone of authenticity. So as I started hiring other researchers, I already knew the expectations. We already had a level of what I expected to come out in terms of authenticity, because the goal with this show was I didn't want it to sound like hokey. If we're telling ghost stories, I didn't want this to be another kind of exploitative of tragedy or something like that. I really wanted to make sure that it was a history show first. So she really helped put that together and really create that vibe to it. Yeah.
No, it's really cool. So how close are you to in age? I'm just curious.
She's 4 years younger than me.
4 years younger.
Might be 5.
How many siblings do you have?
Just one. It's just the two of us. And New Orleans born and raised, and been here for 20 years now myself, but she's back home.
So the podcast Southern Gothic, you've been doing this, well, I think I saw the date 2018. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, 2018.
So over 200 episodes.
Yes.
Plenty to binge there. And
Absolutely.
I've been binging lately on my walks, or I throw a backpack on with my weights in it, and I take the dog and I go for a walk, and I listen to Brandon, and whether it's Alice Riley in Savannah or the Sloss Furnace in Birmingham, the ghost ship off the Outer Banks, right? I love how you incorporate the guitar, the music, the sound effects. It's a really fun show. But to take a step back for a second, we always, on Southern Character, we get back to our Southern roots and the evolution of Brandon. So you were born in New Orleans.
Born and raised in New Orleans.
And so how, from New Orleans to Nashville, how do you get here?
Well, I'll start with, since I was from New Orleans, I'll prove the authenticity, just like Ralph Brennan did. I went to Jesuit High School. So there's the New Orleans High School I went to, right? Anyone's going to ask. So I went to Jesuit. I ended up
Well, that's what people in New Orleans care about.
Exactly.
Like where do you go to school? It's not where'd you go to college. It's where'd you go to school?
That's what listening to your interview with Ralph was almost the first 5 minutes, right? So yes, I'm from New Orleans legitimately, family going back 200 years, that kind of thing. Yeah,
okay.
totally totally back to the beginning of New Orleans. And I am probably, in my father's side, the first one to even leave in like 200 years. But I came to college in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. I learned music production technology, so I'm an audio guy by trade.
Yep.
Came up here, did that, went to school for that. And as I was telling you earlier, without dating myself, I didn't know what I was going to do after that. I was in music, was obsessed with recording studios. I was right here in Nashville, had a network in Nashville, but I was also a 21-year-old obsessed with music. So I ended up kind of bouncing around completely, who knows where, and was in New Orleans for about a month when Katrina happened. Was down there, I just graduated college. So Katrina was like a kick in the butt, time to grow up for me. And ended up back up in Nashville. I've been here ever since. Started working in recording studios on Music Row, just right down the road here. Right. And was in recording studios. Was of that generation where I was probably the youngest guy who still knew how to cut analog tape, and use the computer. And so it was a really, I found this kind of sweet spot in this transition part of the industry, and ended up working with some really big artists over the years as the young guy in the room.
I was looking at some of the names of the people that you had the opportunity to work with, people like George Strait, Peter Frampton, Pistol Annies, right? Leanne Womack. Yeah. I don't know. Can you share some of this? Did you have any fun stories that you can share about that?
Yeah. I mean, I tell you, I did not. What was wonderful about being in this music world, especially in Nashville, is it was very tight knit. It was everyone was fantastic. I mean, I can tell you, George Strait, there's a reason he's as big as he is, and it's because he's truly that authentic of a human. He is, I'm not blowing smoke or anything. He's that sweet of a guy. He is that just personable. Obviously he's intelligent with business and everything else as well. But I've been to Key West a few times. We recorded some of his albums down at Jimmy Buffett's studio.
Really?
Those were probably some of the best memories in my life of being down there. And of course, again, I was the young guy in the room, probably about 10, 15 years at that point. I was the kind of, I don't want to say grunt. I had graduated from grunt. I was running the board, but, taking everybody else's commands in the studio for sure. But I think just to demonstrate, George, I would see him maybe once every 2 years, and it was just when we're making a record, right? Okay. So, you'd kind of have that, you'd spend maybe a week straight with him right? And, you spend a week with him, 12-hour days. And then, it'd kind of go off, and maybe we're exchanging emails. And, I was working for a guy who had worked for him for 20, 25 years. My mentor had, grown up in that, working with him at the same time. And, so he kind of, obviously he knew who I was every time we saw, and he kept a close-knit group. But, in the grand scheme of everything else, I was the smallest part of the team and the newest. And anyway, about 5 years into it, he did his Cowboy Rides Away tour, giant tour. It was going to be, basically he was going to stop touring and stay home, be a grandpa finally, right? And did the largest indoor concert at that stadium in Dallas, the Jimmy Jones World Stadium, right? Yes. With the giant screen and everything. And so we're going to go record that. We went, we had a truck underneath. It was a big thing. I mean, it was 6 months of heavy work putting this kind of live album. That was his final show. Like 125,000 people show up. And so we finish recording, we go upstairs to the after party, and of course it's just like every other A-list thing where it's like you have to get in to begin with, right? And give them your phone, and you can't bring your phone in, and you get in, and then you realize, okay, yeah, I'm in the after party, but there's another corded off area over there even, right? And so, there's 100 people in there, and there's even the back, And so the guy that I was working for, Chuck Ainley is his name. He was, like I said, my mentor. He was really he was the producer on a lot of this. We go back, we get pulled back to that back area, get to go in, and we kind of go in, and George greets me, and Chuck's like, oh, you remember Brandon? I know you guys haven't seen each other for a while. And George not only greeted me, but asked me how my kids were doing by name, actually remembered my kids' names.
That's insane.
And, so this man who just was in front of 125,000 people, hadn't seen him in a year and a half, remembered my 2 little girls' names. It was wild.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, that's how wonderful some of those people are, and you understand, yeah.
So how old are your girls now?
16 and 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How's that?
If you could see my hair right now, everybody I have one that's learning to drive.
Yeah.
Yep. We're talking about PSATs last night and everything. And the 10-year-old, we're okay right now.
Okay. Yeah. So 16 and 10-year-old, 2 girls.
2 girls. Yeah. I'm a girl dad, a pushover.
Wow. Yeah, you're gonna have a couple of weddings to pay for in the future.
Oh man, we're not good. We're looking at today, James. Just today.
You know what? That's let's live in the moment.
Yeah.
So, how do you transition from this music world into the dark history of the South and storytelling? How did that evolve?
Well, at the core of it, at that point in time, like you said, it was about 6 years ago. It was 2018 was when I started it. I was starting to become really obsessed with podcasts early on. I really enjoyed listening to Radiolab, which was this classic public radio. And he was clearly a journalist who was a musician on the side, and he was doing these weird things with sound. And I would be setting up for the day's sessions listening to podcasts on these giant speakers that were meant, these $50,000 speakers that were meant for high quality audio, and just was like, I want to do that. But I didn't have plans yet. So anyway, in 2018, I was in between records. I had probably about a month or 2 off. Creatively, at that point, I was feeling I was making everybody else's records, right? Country music at that point that was kind of that turn of into bro country. I was getting a little sour with some of what we were making, was feeling a bit methodical. And so I just started dabbling in this. Topically, though, I guess that's always the funny part, was topically, I didn't know what I wanted to do at first, and kind of leaned back on, well, what even could I make that was cool? So I wasn't an expert in ghost stories at this point in time. I was kind of like, all right, I'm going to make my own music. I'm going to do sound design. I want to make this creative thing. Here are 2 or 3 options. And I dabbled a little bit in history, and I felt like I wasn't knowledgeable enough to pull that off. And of course, born and raised in New Orleans, what do you get? I end up kind of with this haunted history thing. And that's really, when it came to that, there was a point in time where I remember wanting to be a tour guide. I always thought that was the coolest job ever growing up, when you'd go downtown and you'd see these guys are doing, and so it really kind of fit that hitting back this little 14-year-old in me that thought oh man, it would be so cool to tell ghost stories, and and all my closest friends in music are storyteller songwriters. Mm-hmm. Most of my close friends were songwriters, not artists, and really all had that old Americana vibe where you could just sit around and listen to them talk, even because it would just be so poetic. And so that storytelling thing really hit with me, and it just kind of fell together, and it really embraced kind of my before I got too run down in career-wise and burnt out. I was pulling, 80-hour weeks in studios and all. It really embraced that kind of earlier weird interests of growing up down there. But my sister and I together joke whenever somebody asks, why that? My parents were into genealogy, very much into genealogy. And this was, of course, pre-internet, when I was, 8, 10 years old or something. And so they didn't have Ancestry. We would go, so they would drag us to these libraries and archives all along the Mississippi River in kind of those, outer parishes like St. John the Baptist Parish and all.
Sure. Yeah.
And we would go on the weekends to look at microfiche and go to cemeteries, up and down the Mississippi River. So, so anytime, my aunt really likes to remind my mom, look what you did to them, right? Look at what their career is now.
And this was all researching their ancestry?
Yeah, it was the Schexnayder line. I mean, everything. They were just, that was their fascination. That was their hobby at that point in time. And they were really into it. And
so you guys would literally just go up and down the Mississippi River. I mean, I don't mean by paddle boat,
right. Yeah, I know that sounds
like Huck Finn, but no, so you guys were literally just up and down. New Orleans. Louisiana.
The Schexnayder name, without getting history. So the Schexnayder name, it's a German name, obviously, but it only exists from the New Orleans area because it's kind of Frenchified, if you will. So when New Orleans was founded, it was a group of soldiers, and it was, it was a pretty ragtag group of people.
It was rough, yeah.
They nobody wanted to farm, and so they convinced a bunch of poor farmers to come over. We'll give you land, and come work the land on the river up there, and that would help feed the city. And so I come from some of those people who came over in those early years, related, of course, to like the Haydels back then. Any of those kind of German New Orleans names that are popular. If you go through some of those cemeteries, it's called the German Coast. If you go upriver and Edgard area, that kind of spot up there, if you go up there and walk through those cemeteries where there's the last name Schexnayder, you'll see a lot of those kind of like Haydel is. That's the most popular you would see, right?
Of course. Haydel's Bakery.
Where else? Yeah. Where else are you going to get your king cake? Which I guess we could fight over as well about that. But
I'm sure there's a turf war on king cake in New Orleans. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, literally, hey, come on, kids, we're going to the cemetery.
Pretty much. Well, no, we didn't want to. Let's put it that way. So it's even a recurring joke sometimes when my kids we'll go on vacation. There might be somewhere we stop. We were in Atlanta not a couple of years ago. We were in Atlanta and went to the big city cemetery.
Yep.
Was it Oakland?
Oakland Cemetery.
Yeah, we went there, and I have some pictures of my kids sitting there while we're on a tour, just looking miserable. And I just sent it to my sister, and I said that the wheel just continues turning.
Yeah, circular.
Yeah, keeps going.
It's funny. Now I realize that when I was driving in today to meet in your studio space, I passed by Nashville City Cemetery.
Yeah.
And just in that moment, I almost got out of the car to walk around to be like, oh, I'm meeting with Brandon today. I'm going to go, tool through this cemetery.
It's a beautiful cemetery.
It looked really pretty, actually.
Yeah, it is a beautiful cemetery.
So you get into the ghost telling and the storytelling.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, based on this track that you're going, have you ever personally, had any kind of experience, whether it was a paranormal encounter or anything like that? I'm just wondering.
Well, I joke that I haven't, and it really bothers me because I'm doing such great PR for these guys. And for some reason, they don't want to come visit.
They don't contact you? Okay.
Everything. I start with storytelling and history first. So I'm coming from that angle. Obviously the community that I'm in, I know a lot of people who are very much into that kind of ghost hunting world and that paranormal. A lot of great friends who are very into it, but not for a lack of trying. I've got nothing, and I've been to every famous location you can in the South practically, and still nothing. Those guys just don't want to hang out with me, apparently.
So you mentioned your inner 14-year-old wanting to be a tour guide. At one point, didn't you give walking tours?
I did. That was, and it was recently.
Yeah.
It was.
I thought it was.
I'd been doing the show for a couple of years, and when COVID happened, a friend of mine who was a tour guide in Franklin, Tennessee, which is right south of Nashville here. It's an old Civil War town. Okay, it's a beautiful town, and it's an old Civil War town, and she was given tours for a company there for about 10, 15 years maybe. She had been the kind of main tour guide, and with all of that, she had considered buying the company. The owner of the company was going to retire. Anyway, just things didn't pan out, went the way they did. My friend ends up kind of starting her own business right out of COVID, and she starts kind of giving tours and then realizes like, man, I can't do this by myself, and as, running a business, or how do you scale? And she ended up in this weird space. She had her first grandkid and needed some time off, and I was like, you know what? I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do. It was an opportunity to help a friend and get to like embrace something, man. And I loved it so much. Unfortunately, I don't do them anymore. When it comes to, time to dollar, it's not the best use of time.
Gotcha.
You definitely, it wears you out. You're putting on a show every night.
Right.
And especially during the summer.
Were you doing one a night or two a night or more?
I was only doing one a night at that point. So it was about an hour and a half tour, and it was a blast, because you'll walk about a mile and a half for an hour and a half and go through this historic downtown and stop at spots, and you have an audience there because they're walking with you and you're getting to interact with people. And that was so different than what I had done before and what I do now even. I don't interact with listeners. I don't see a response. I don't get that kind of feedback, right? Or not instantaneous, at least. So it really, coming out of COVID and having the opportunity to do something I'd always wanted to do, experience it that way, it vastly changed, I want to say, almost everything about how I tell stories on the show. It changed almost everything about, even doing business. I realize I am more comfortable on a stage in front of 50 people than I am in a situation like this.
Really? Okay.
I am like instantly, and I did not know that about myself prior, right? You kind of have something you're talking about, people are there. It allows your hyper focus to kick in because there's nothing else I can think about, right? When you're in front of people. And doing tours for her, I did it seasonally for 3 years. Would do Halloween stuff with her. By the last year, I was kind of just doing fill-ins and all, but I couldn't, especially during Halloween season and everything else. I couldn't juggle growing a business and kind of doing that as a side hobby. But it drastically changed everything. Yeah, I think ultimately getting that opportunity to, as I said, interact in front of people, and you're on a street corner. This is the best part. You're on a street corner telling a story, and there's a payoff on that story. And you're doing this nightly on a regular basis, so you're fine-tuning, honing these presentations, if you will, and trying to, interact with people, and you're ready, and here's this big payoff for this ghost story, and a motorcycle drives by and ruins it, right? And what do? Because I've got to re-engage these people real quick. Or even worse, sometimes because, sometimes one of my friends would drive by and yell out at us or something, right?
Right.
And so it taught me something that being on the podcast and interacting and trying to fine tune, it taught me something entirely different that I think was just beneficial to the end. There's no other way to learn. It was just being in front of people like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, when I think about, I love a good ghost tour. And I've been on ghost tours in New Orleans. I've been on ghost tours in Savannah. I don't think I've been on one in Charleston yet. But I guess where I'm going with this is that the tour guide really makes the tour. Like if you have a great guide, then it's an amazing experience. If you have a not so great guide, or they're just, they don't have that zip or whatever, it kind of falls flat. Are there ghost tours or people that in different cities that you would recommend? Like if I was going to go to Savannah or Charleston, you're like, James, you got to go check out so-and-so. Like who would you recommend in that space?
Yeah, well, it depends on where you go. There's different people certainly in what you're interested in. So, I always define like, are you looking for kind of haunted history or are you looking to find ghosts? Charleston has probably like my idol of a tour guide, if you will. There's a gentleman there named Mike Brown. It's called the Pleasing Terrors Tour. And Mike he grew up in Charleston, so he's a native. And he even has his own podcast called Pleasing Terrors. He comes out every once in a while, put out an episode, and it's a deep dive. But he has lived in Charleston, breathed Charleston, been a tour guide for 25 years. And he has this delivery that's like Vincent Price that just sucks you in. And I went and saw him a year ago. We went to Charleston, a little over a year ago, summer before last, we went to Charleston and went on that tour. And I was like a kid at a Taylor Swift concert, man.
Awesome.
And I know him personally, we're friends. We've been friends before. He's helped me out with stuff. But man, being on his tour, it was like watching a performer that did something entirely different than you. He's very even-keeled and Vincent Price, and it like kind of sucks you and you keep leaning in. And I'm very dynamic and very much entertainment business type. And it was so fine-tuned and beautiful. So I always recommend that tour. As any creative will know, I left that tour and I told my girlfriend, I want to quit. That was too good. I'll never get there,
So you said it's called Pleasant Terrors?
Pleasing Terrors.
Pleasing Terrors, okay.
Yeah, and so he'll take you by all the spots, like the Lavinius Fisher spot. Okay. He'll take you by the cemetery over there, the Unitarian Church Cemetery, where, without giving it away, they say that Edgar Allan Poe's Annabelle Lee is buried there. So there's some really cool stories around that. But yeah, he'll take you through that main historic part of Charleston. Okay. So,
yeah, I'm more about the haunted history tour aspect of it than I'm into like, hey, let's go find a ghost. Yeah. Now, when we're tooling around the Savannah squares, after a couple of pops, we might go by a couple of the cemeteries and take pictures and see if we can capture orbs or anything like that. But have you been on any tours in Savannah that you like? Speaking of Savannah,
I haven't. I haven't really. I've gone to places, but I haven't done a tour
Okay.
out there. Yeah.
So one more question about Mike, since you highly recommended him. If you
Fanboy is the word you're looking for, right?
If I book a tour through his company, are you actually getting Mike Brown every time, or does he have like several tour cuts?
It is just him.
It's just him. Very cool.
It is his own business. I mean, he's grinding out 2 a night. He is the master at what he does. So yeah.
Wow. So what about whether it's a book, a movie, like a documentary? Do you have any favorite, horror books or haunted history books or movies or?
Well, if you're looking for authentic stuff, again, differentiate, what kind of our niche versus the ghost adventures guys running around in warehouses with, flashlights yelling. If you're looking for really well-researched books, a gentleman named Troy Taylor, who he works out of Alton, Illinois, and he's kind of become really the very prolific author, but really the guy that typifies well-researched, well-considered, thoughtful approach to haunted history. So he's written, almost any subject you can think about. He's written, I just read recently one on Lincoln, and he goes through and he talks about Lincoln's upbringing and how, Lincoln was, he was a hillbilly growing up, right? So of course he had weird superstitions and then went on in through all the hauntings of Lincoln and does it in a very objective way that doesn't feel gratuitous like some of the ghost tour stuff can get kind of make you feel a little icky if you want just straight history. So book wise, I always recommend Troy. Hands down, if there's a topic, he's the first place to go. If you're looking for a little more general reading in it, there's a book called Ghostland by Colin Dickey. It was published by a large publisher. It was one of those books that would be like an airport book, right? So very accessible to people. And I want to say, I can't remember what the subtitle was, but it was basically like American History Through Hauntings or something. And he kind of goes through the themes of of what it is, why are haunted houses such a big theme. And then he talks about some of the places. It's more of I don't know if I'd call it a beach read variety, but it's more accessible if you're not, as deep into a subject and you're just kind of looking for a good read. It's much lighter. So those book wise, TV shows can be hit or miss. A lot of documentaries, it's hit or miss, yeah.
You mentioned, and it just brought right to mind to me, you're talking about Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
And I was listening to one of your recent shows on Southern Gothic, The Thing in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
The White House Hauntings. First of all, that was a great show. And that one came out pretty recently.
Yeah.
You have people come in, experts come in sometimes to speak on your show. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, like when you work on a show, how long does it take you to research? Right. You seem like you want to produce a quality product that's genuine and authentic. So, how many hours do you put into researching everything?
It depends topic to topic. I will say that because you never know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, when it comes to a show, if somebody says, hey, my mama told me this story, it's either going to be a 5-minute episode or it's going to be like, we got to peel back here and decide where the end is. And we've got to figure it out because you can go down so many rabbit holes,
right.
Especially places like New Orleans and Savannah and Charleston. Like there's 12 versions of the story over 200 years. To use the Thing episode as an example, I did that one, actually co-produced that one. It was in collaboration with another podcaster who's on the same network I'm on. And he spends a lot of time he tells basically silly stories of presidents. Okay. He finds all the things that you don't hear in history books. Some of them are silly. Some of them are more conspiracy. It's all historical. It's not political, by the way, but he'll find these strange stories. And so, with that particular one, he brought me most of the research to begin with, and we sat down and did interviews. But typically I have a researcher who will spend maybe about 20 hours digging.
Wow.
I try and convince her to cap it. We're a breed that likes rabbit holes, and we got to be really careful. And then it'll probably take me maybe about 10 hours to get the script nailed down. So it's usually, I say, about a day and a half once I get a good script. And that's the one thing that I haven't, the final script and the sound design those are the two aspects that I still haven't given away. I still, hold on. That's my creative. That's the part that I enjoy. I'll get first drafts of scripts from people, but then I still have to put in my own voice. I still feel like it's important to keep the personality to it.
Yeah, no, it's your signature for sure.
Yeah, but as a business owner, I wish I could find a better way to pull that system down, because essentially top to bottom, I say we average 40 hours total of work on an episode. Yeah.
Well, they're very captivating, and I love the whole haunted history, true crime genre. Are you playing the guitar?
That is me. Actually.
That is you.
Yeah. So for the most part, I do use some canned music. I'll use some libraries if it fits kind of the theme for the episode. But essentially, I created a while back, kind of like a box of crayons that this is what we color with. And that's essential as a creative, because you really do have to make sure, again, you don't go too far down the rabbit hole. Because early on, I was making a different theme song practically every time, and I was really enjoying it, and it was doing that, but, you can't scale. So I essentially have about, anywhere from 15 to 20 pieces of music that I've made over the years and kind of tweaked, and we'll stick with the majority of that and then kind of work out of there. So yeah, everything, all those mistakes that you hear, the timing errors, I like to say they're intentional, because, that makes you feel the tension if something slows down accidentally. But no, that's my guitar playing.
No, that's really, I was wondering, you mentioned that you were in Atlanta not too long ago. And this doesn't have to be, it can be family related. It doesn't have to necessarily be haunted or history or research related, but just in and around the Southeast. Yeah. What are some of the experiences and destinations that you appreciate, that you would recommend to people?
Well, I think aside from the big ones, right? Obviously, I feel like everybody, the Savannah, the Charleston, everything. If you're really interested in taking some field trips out, I think one of my favorite places was that's incorrect. Cahaba in Alabama. It's an old ghost town, and it was the state capital of Alabama. And there are these old structures there, and it's now a national or a historic park, landmark, something of that nature. And you can go drive around this old ghost town and see how it was laid out. And there's an old cemetery there, and it's right outside of Montgomery. So if you're ever in that part. That was a fascinating, well beyond anything I imagined when I went there. If you're looking for a little more, hokey type stuff, everybody goes to Waverly Hills, the old sanatorium in Louisville. Okay, so if you ever take a trip to Louisville, you can book this. It's this old abandoned, it was not a sanatorium. It was for tuberculosis. So it's just big 4 or 5 story building, and you can go during the day and take tours, or you could go at night and do the ghost hunt, right? That one's one of the big classic ones. The Myrtles Plantation, of course, that bed and breakfast. You can go have a bed and breakfast down at America's most haunted home is what they call it.
Right, it's just outside of Baton Rouge, right?
St. Francisville, Baton Rouge. It is a beautiful place. They kind of, when it comes to history, that's still privately owned. So, I will, everybody kind of calls them out a little bit. Some of that stuff is a little bit, they could move a little more on some of their research and get a little better. But how could it not be haunted? I say that, like, some of the ghost stories were suspect and might be, but it's an old plantation, and I believe it boasts, historically accurate, that something like 10 people have been killed or died in the home. So how could it not be haunted? And it's a fascinating place. Beautiful, because it's right there. Those are the big haunted places outside of Savannah or doing in New Orleans, yeah.
What was the name of the town in Alabama again, one more time?
It was Cahaba.
Cahaba, Alabama. Yeah. I'd never heard of that. That sounds actually pretty cool.
It's really
And if it's Montgomery, I'm just thinking about it in terms of Atlanta. I mean, that's only like 2 hours away from Atlanta.
Let's see.
That's actually not too far away. When it comes to your favorite ghost stories, you mentioned that you did, tours in Franklin. I was just hoping maybe you could share some of your, whether it's a local like ghost story or a few, what are some of your favorite ghost stories, or can you share a couple?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'll share one that on the surface, this might seem like the wrong time, but there's a reason.
Okay.
Because right now, you're concerned about a hurricane, right? And this one does have to do with a hurricane, but I feel like, excuse me, every time I tell this story, whether you believe it or not, I feel like this individual kind of, protects you a little bit. So, right, if you go between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, head west out of New Orleans, and you're going to Baton Rouge, and maybe you're familiar with it, Middendorf's out there, so halfway between the two. It's called Manchac Swamp. Excuse me. Maybe she doesn't want me to tell the story because
she might not.
Getting a little hoarse here. Well, this used to be a community, as I was even talking about earlier, is the German coast. There's a German community there called Schlosser, and they were harvesting timber, all the cypress trees, which unfortunately now was over harvested, and that's why we have some problems with hurricanes in the area. But there's a woman who lived there for years named Julia Brown, and Julia was born enslaved, and her husband Celestin had gotten this land through a land grant. He fought for the U.S. Army in the Civil War. He was part of what was called the U.S. Colored Troops. Mm-hmm. And so we have this black family living in a blonde-haired, blue-eyed community out in the swamps where you couldn't even get there but by boat or train. And purportedly she practiced voodoo, whether she was a root worker or a voodoo, but she got along with the community well because she ended up being the midwife for the community, was well-loved. They apparently really helped them for years and years. And then at some point after her husband died, she was probably somewhere between late 70s and 80s, something happened and just her attitude towards everybody changed. And legend says that she started like kind of staying away from town, and when they'd go out to visit her out in the swamp and then go out to the cabin, she'd be like in a rocking chair fiddling with just some yarn or something, singing this song, "When I die, I'll take the whole town with me." And she'd be singing this song. And of course, they're freaked out. They're in the middle of the swamp, right? And, and it kind of becomes a talk of the town or whatever. And then one day, of course, she passes away from old age. We don't know how. But again, she's probably almost in her 80s at that point. A long life she lived in. Well, sure enough, she passes away. And now the question is, was this a curse? Was she telling us this? And they have her funeral 2 days later. And in the middle of her funeral, one of the largest hurricanes, pre-recorded names, the largest hurricane prior to being named storms, came and plowed through southeastern Louisiana. And the folks in town, the newspaper accounts even relate this. This is documented. They were at her funeral when the wind started hitting at that point. So they don't know. This is 1915. They didn't really have a lot of that forecasted knowledge. And of course, the walls are shaking, everything. These people are at the funeral of this woman, like scared. She prophesized this, right? Well, again, this was a Category 4 storm, I believe, at that point in time. Storm surge up over 12 feet. The town of Frenier was utterly decimated after that. They found her coffin floating in the swamp several days later, right? Completely destroyed Frenier. And over 200 people died from that storm in southeastern Louisiana. So this legend's been told down there in that area, right where Middendorf's is, Manchac Swamp right there. There's a swamp tour company that you can go, and it's right next to where she lived and everything. But the questions kind of come up, was she cursing the town, or was she warning us of what was going to happen? And over the years, that's been the question. So I joke about telling it now, though, with it being hurricane season, is I feel like every time we've told her story before, my sister is obsessed with this story. She's the one that found it originally. Found her in census records, everything, right? And every time there's a storm now, we have the joke, like, we better light a candle for Aunt Julia because, make sure we remember her, because really we think that, she was warning us, of the hurricane. So
no, and that's awesome. So your sister has written a lot about Julia Brown?
She has. So she's been publishing some articles, some journals and stuff. So she's got there's a book series called Feminine Macabre, where there's all these female and non-binary authors that write in the paranormal world. And so she's written a couple things. Julia's been in there. She's written about Josie Arlington from down in New Orleans, the famed brothel owner from the jazz era. Her tomb is purportedly haunted as well, but there's that's a whole story as well. It's the Metairie Cemetery down there. Yeah. And beautiful cemetery. So Brienne's gotten a couple of things she's published over the years in some journals, stuff like that.
Coming back to present day, want to get into some of the things that you have coming up, but probably first and foremost, top question on everyone's mind for Brandon is, what are you dressing up as for Halloween?
Tired. Yeah, if you ask my girlfriend, she's like, "You're not going another year without dressing up. We have a party this year."
So you don't dress up?
And I just it's like, what does Santa do on Christmas Day? Right? He sleeps.
Yeah.
Work's over.
Work's over.
So I think last year I made her go get tacos with me after I took a nap that afternoon because on Halloween Day, and the kids ran around the neighborhood. Right? A 16-year-old. I don't want to know what she was doing. Mm-hmm. So. I was told that it's got to be related to her Medusa outfit that apparently is well prepared. So I will have to figure something out. But no, I definitely, that's a day of rest for me.
Okay.
It hits the end of the line.
Well, you could always go with Perseus.
I'll figure. Oh yeah.
To go with Medusa, or maybe Zeus. Who knows? Right?
Well, I've got the long hair, so we'll figure something out.
Some kind of Greek god.
Some way to
So you mentioned, busy time of the year. You have a live event coming up. Can you share some information about that? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So since I'm not doing ghost tours anymore, I'll do these stage shows. And so we'll be in Nashville on October 17th in Nashville. You can go to our website even and get tickets. And these are small kind of intimate venues, like showcase venues. I get on stage. I will tell stories for about an hour and a half or so. And I bring along my friend who plays guitar. It feels like a campfire vibe. She kind of adds some fun, this kind of Southern sounding guitar playing, and get it a little extra creepy and help bring it up. And it looks a lot like if you were on a ghost tour, but we're not moving around from place to place. Mm-hmm. It's very much just looks like stand up with ghost stories, but it's really bad dad jokes. It's not like stand up jokes. So this year, October 17th, it's at Indu Nashville. You can get tickets at southerngothicmedia.com. And we'll be doing that. And of course, you can buy a spirits package as well if you want a little, extra spirits. I get funnier if you do.
Yeah,
it's scarier.
So adult beverages will be served.
Adult beverages, exactly.
I love that as well. I love that. Is there an age limit on the show, or can anybody come?
I've never put an age limit. I just don't know
how. Do you go super scary, or
I don't. It's I don't think it's super scary per se. Like I said, it's like a haunt. There's no jump scares or anything. I don't do anything that's too grim, so I would say we'd probably call it PG-13 if I'm warning anyone.
I think that's right.
I think, unfortunately, my 10-year-old could probably give the ghost tour down in Franklin if you ever want to book her, because she just insisted on going on it so often and is already a podcast star. There's a kids show called Unspookable that I don't have anything to do with, but a friend of mine has been producing for years. It's for 10 to 13-year-old range, kind of like younger kids, where they talk about ghost stories and talk about why they shouldn't be scared. It's a cool way.
That's really
cool. And after my daughter devoured every episode of it, I realized, I know Nate. And now my daughter is now a storyteller on Unspookable from time to time.
How cool is that?
Nepotism is real in the ghost industry, right? So it's not, they're never too bad.
That's fun.
Well,
it's fun that you guys can share in that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's really cool. So off-topic question, and I have to ask this question. We're both from New Orleans.
Yeah.
Right? I like my food spicy. I like it hot. Are you a spicy guy or no?
I'm a spicy guy.
You're you are a spicy guy. And so I'm in Nashville. Uh-huh. Before I leave town, all I hear about is the Nashville hot chicken, like Nashville hot fried chicken, or Nashville style. What, in your opinion, where should I go to get the best Nashville hot chicken while in Nashville? Or is that a fair question, or is it all good?
Well, I'm hesitant to say because I don't want to turn any of my fans off by being too judgy here.
Okay. Maybe name a couple.
Well, I'm talking about hot chicken in general, because being from New Orleans, obviously we're a bit pretentious.
Sure.
And so I'm not really a purveyor of hot chicken, because but Hattie B's is the place.
Hattie B's.
Okay. That's the one. Now, if you want the old school where it started, there's a place called Prince's, and it will knock your socks off if you want to do that kind of old school. They've been here forever, 20-something years, and everybody else has kind of stolen their thunder and marketed off of Prince's.
Gotcha.
But Hattie B's is the one in town that has the best experience and the most options.
But so then we can elevate. For an elevated palate, what do you think is one of the best dining experiences or eating experiences in Nashville as a foodie?
Well, Nashville has dramatically changed over the last 10 years. And we have so many options now. When I got here, it was not a food town at all. So now you can almost get good dining in whatever kind of thing you're into, right? There's something here now, every type of, food, cuisine or something. We're there, and it's been fascinating watching Nashville grow. I really enjoy, there's a place called Iberian Pig that's from Atlanta too, that's here. We've been going there a lot lately. Okay. It's down in our Gulch area over here. But if you do come to Nashville, I actually would recommend, if you want like authentic, that's what's kind of funny. Governor, like what is authentically Nashville? Go out of town and go to Loveless Cafe. Okay. And it is your old greasy spoon type place where you're going to get biscuits and chicken and old Southern. It was an old motel on the Natchez Trace, right at the end of the Natchez Trace. It's the place where, people are driving the Trace, going on those kind of road trips. They go there. I recommend that. It's probably about 15 to 20 minutes out of town, and you will get those big tables. It's the most Southern dining experience, mashed potatoes, gravy, everything that will make you want to take a nap.
Very cool.
That's the place. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover today that I didn't cover that you want to hit on?
No, I think it's wonderful. I love what you're doing here, because obviously what's so important to me with, I talk about ghost stories and do these things, but I clearly picked it as being Southern. I clearly picked this as a regional thing. And I really think that what you're doing, even with having the Southern angle, is important, because a lot of what I want to do is preserve what your mama told you, but doing that in a way that evolves it and elevates us, because we're not telling old haint ghost stories or whatever from hollers and all. So, no, man, check it out. Check out Southern Gothic if you're interested, and come to the show or hit us up anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a great place to land it. So,
awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll reiterate, make sure you binge all the past episodes of Southern Gothic, of the Southern Gothic podcast. There's plenty to choose from, and you have shows coming out basically every Monday, right?
Every Monday, Southern Gothic comes out. Yep.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, you can find this episode of Southern Character and more wherever you podcast, or on retiresouthern.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you love, especially during the spooky season. Any questions or feedback, or you want to be a guest on Southern Character, someone who's a Southern Character, feel free to email us, contact@retiresouthern.com. Brandon, thank you so much again.
Thank you for
being with me, man. Stay spooky.
Exactly.
Right?
Stay spooky.
Stay spooky, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening so much.